It's every family's nightmare. A man who was supposed to protect them, turning into their executioner. In a case that shocked the nation, a successful businessman who once lived a life of luxury and success spiraled into a violent rage that ended with the brutal murders of his wife and daughter. What led to this horrific tragedy? The story behind the execution-style killings, the luxurious mansion, and the disturbing motive reveals just how deeply financial turmoil can unravel the lives of even the wealthiest families. Welcome to Crime Spot. Today, we'll explore the chilling story of a seemingly perfect family whose world came crashing down when a rich dad murdered his wife and daughter amid the stress of a $5 million mansion eviction. The case unfolded in the affluent neighborhoods of California, and the details are nothing short of horrifying. The $1 Million Mansion and the Fall of a Family. The story begins in one of California's most exclusive neighborhoods, a sprawling $5 million mansion nestled in a gated community, once the pride of a wealthy businessman, Thomas Adams. At 47 years old, Thomas had it all: a successful career in tech, a beautiful wife named Elizabeth, and a young daughter, Lily, who was just 9 years old. For years, the family lived in what many would consider a dream home, luxurious, private, and full of comfort. But behind the glistening exterior, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Thomas had built his wealth over decades, but recently, cracks began to show in his empire. The tech market had faltered, and his business ventures, once booming, had suffered severe financial setbacks. As his financial troubles deepened, the stress began to take its toll on his personal life. Thomas became consumed by mounting debts, threats from creditors, and the looming possibility of losing the mansion he had poured so much into. The $5 million home, which once symbolized his success, was now the embodiment of his failure, the strain of eviction. By the summer of 2020, Thomas had fallen behind on his mortgage payments. The family was facing eviction, and the bank was ready to take the mansion back. Thomas knew that this would mean not just losing his home, but also everything he had worked for. His status, his pride, and his identity were all tied to this mansion. He had already lost much of his wealth, and with the eviction looming, he feared the worst. To add to his pressure, Thomas's marriage was in turmoil. Elizabeth had grown increasingly frustrated with his inability to manage their finances. Arguments became more frequent, and she began to take steps to secure her future. Elizabeth had started consulting with a divorce lawyer, preparing for a future where she and Lily would be better off without the financial chaos Thomas had brought into their lives. For Thomas, this felt like the ultimate betrayal. His world, once filled with privilege, was crumbling around him, and with no way out, he became desperate. In the days leading up to the murders, friends and colleagues reported that Thomas was not himself. He was irritable, short-tempered, and distant, often locking himself away in his study or going on long solitary drives. The night of the murders. On the evening of July 17, 2020, the unthinkable happened. The night had started like any other. Elizabeth and Lily were in the kitchen preparing dinner, while Thomas retreated into his study, as he had been doing more frequently in recent days. However, this would be the night that everything changed. For reasons still not fully understood, Thomas snapped. Fueled by anger, fear, and perhaps a sense of being backed into a corner, he armed himself with a handgun. The family, already struggling with the emotional strain of their financial downfall, had no idea that Thomas' desperation would lead to such a catastrophic end. Around 8:30 p.m., Elizabeth and Lily were found dead in the home. Both had been shot execution style, close range, with precise shots to the head. The scene was chilling. There was no sign of a struggle, no forced entry, just the devastating reality that a father had brutally murdered his own family. What was even more unsettling was the calmness of the crime. Neighbors reported hearing nothing unusual, and there was no indication of violence or destruction in the neighborhood that night. Thomas had seemingly acted without warning or provocation, and in a matter of minutes, his life as he knew it was destroyed forever. The investigation and discovery. The following morning, when family members couldn't reach Thomas or his family, they grew worried. When authorities arrived at the mansion, they initially believed they were investigating a double homicide, a wife and daughter murdered in their own home. But what they found inside the mansion was far more chilling. Thomas Adams was missing. No one had seen or heard from him since the night of the murders. His car was gone, and there was no indication of where he had gone or why he had committed such a heinous crime. In the days following the murders, police issued an all-points bulletin for Thomas, believing he may have fled the state. The investigation quickly pointed to a motive: financial ruin. Authorities discovered that Thomas had recently faced significant financial hardship, including losing several high-profile investments and failing to secure new contracts to sustain his lifestyle. The looming eviction from the $5 million mansion, coupled with the strain in his marriage, seemed to push him over the edge. Despite his attempts to disappear, Thomas was eventually tracked down in a neighboring state, holed up in a motel. When he was apprehended, he showed little emotion, offering no resistance. It was as though he had already resigned himself to what he had done. The police noted that he seemed almost detached from the enormity of his actions. The arrest and trial. When Thomas was arrested, he initially refused to speak with investigators. But as the evidence against him mounted, including ballistic tests linking his gun to the murders and his fingerprints found on the handgun, he was forced to confront the reality of his crime. During his trial, Thomas Adams's defense attorney attempted to argue that he had been suffering from extreme financial and emotional stress, but this did little to sway the jury. The details of the crime were clear. Thomas had planned and executed the murders with deliberate intent. He had killed his wife and daughter not out of self-defense or a moment of rage, but out of cold, calculated desperation. The prosecution painted a portrait of a man who had lost control of his life and, in a fit of pride and fear, had taken the lives of the two people who loved him most. It was a tragedy that shocked everyone who knew the Adams family. The aftermath and legacy. In the months following the trial, Thomas Adams was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But the case left behind more than just a broken man. It left a community reeling from the loss of 2 innocent lives. The mansion, once a symbol of success, was auctioned off to pay for the debts that Thomas had accrued. It sold for a fraction of its original value, but the proceeds did little to erase the devastation the Adams family had faced. Elizabeth's family, devastated by the loss, filed for custody of Leslie's surviving relatives, seeking to keep the memory of their beloved daughter and granddaughter alive. The case sparked discussions about the dangers of financial pressure and the effect it can have on relationships and mental health. Experts pointed out that Thomas had failed to seek help for his stress and emotional turmoil, and instead, he chose to turn that turmoil outward in the most violent way imaginable. The tragic story of Thomas Adams serves as a stark reminder that no matter how much wealth one may have, it can never replace the things that truly matter: family, love, and security. In his desperate attempt to hold onto his wealth and pride, Thomas Adams not only destroyed his own life, but also the lives of the people who loved him most. This case underscores the reality that financial pressures, when left unaddressed, can lead to devastating consequences. The mansion, the riches, and the lifestyle, it all crumbled under the weight of a single man's inability to cope with his failures. As always, thank you for watching Crime Spot. If you found this story disturbing or thought-provoking, please leave a comment below and let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into real-life crime stories. Stay safe, and remember, sometimes the darkest secrets lie just beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered.